In all of you, it is our desire to extend a gracious welcome to all of you for the Research Week 2022, organized by the Faculty of Graduate Studies in association of Office of Research, Architecture, Business, Engineering, Information Technology, and Medicine, 5 faculties of University of Moratuwa for the second consecutive year. Today, we mark the commencement of the week, which shows a landmark of University of Moratuwa in research context. Apart from that, it is a special year for our university, which is celebrating its 50th excellence. I believe this will be a fruitful week for our audience to reflect the importance of researching and its output for the academic, industrial, and social development. It is my duty and privilege for our utmost reputed gathering for the inauguration of the Research Week 2022. So, I would like to invite Dean, Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Ajit D. Alvis, to officially welcome our gathering.
It's actually a pleasant task for me to welcome you all to the second University of Moratuwa Research Week. For the first time done in physical. Actually, the last year it was fully virtual with a small group of the organizing committee inside a room. So this time we see it across the university. However, this year is also special as University of Moratuwa celebrates our 50 years. And so we also in turn takes a look back at our 50 years research. And in that context, it's also a pleasant duty of me to welcome our keynote speaker, Emeritus Professor Priyan Dias, who is no stranger to us, but believe that's the best person to do it today. Not only looking at the past, but also telling us about the future, what we should be doing as well. Deputy Vice Chancellor, sir, it's a privilege to have your presence today, and the Dean's colleagues, research students, as well as from the library as well, and the organizing committee. But I must say, first of all, that I'm just expressing myself the welcome, but officially, really the welcome comes from the components of this research week. We also, for the first time, having the ERU symposium of the Faculty of Engineering. So we wait in next year to have the welcome for the very first time, a research event from Faculty of Medicine. And then we will see at the vibrant, maybe participation of everyone. So really this is a welcome and just figurehead. Which includes those 3 conferences and multitude of other things, looking back, success stories, panel discussions, and also the library has 2 shows on, one is looking at the University of Moratuwa research, all the data and analytics, as well as on supporting the research students, the research culture, a display on research methods and so on, and also there will be on ethics discussion. So there are a lot of events of a different nature packed into this one week. And our intention is to celebrate our University of Moratuwa researcher, the past, present, and move towards the future where they will have their rightful place in the university, because we believe it's a researcher that actually sculpt basically they give the format of the presence to a university, a true university. And so it's really valued, our University of Moratuwa researcher. So just finally, need to thank, because this is the only time in the week that I get few minutes. So it's important that while thanking the organizing committee led by Professor Dhyangani for the interesting array of events, as well as the time spent in discussing and organizing. And also for the TCP, Town and Country Planning, for giving us the space. And remember the comment from Professor Jagat, said that, okay, when just one request, and in the tradition of TCP, that the services, the space is yours, and services are yours as well. So thank you very much. And industry sponsors made it in a way little possible, right? So we acknowledge those. So finally, so it's a warm welcome to the event, and hopefully those who are joining online as well as being physically present here will enjoy the week's display and the week's activities and become a little bit more energized to do a little bit more and position research and the impact to the society as we head towards the next 50 years of University of Moratuwa. Thank you and a warm welcome.
Sir, for your warm welcome.
That is, I mentioned about the last, so I must acknowledge, I said it's a 1 minute that I get for the entire this week. Acknowledging the team FGS and Office of Research.
Research Week 2022 was successfully organized with the enormous support given from its beginning. And he is the strength and guidance for hoisting this event in a successful way. So, I cordially invite Deputy Vice Chancellor, Architect, Dr. D.P. Chandrasekhara to express your thoughts and feelings on behalf of the University of Moratuwa.
Good afternoon. Professor Ajit Dialvis, Dean Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Sarath Dasanayake, Dean Faculty of Business, heads of departments, Professor Priyan Dias, the speaker today, and Professor Mahanama, the former Dean of the Faculty, former Deputy Vice Chancellor, heads of the departments, professors, and Director of Research, Professor Gopura, and my colleagues. It's a pleasure for me to make this short speech at the inauguration of the Research Week. We had an event in the morning. That's the conference of the Faculty of Business, and I understand we have several of them. And in this week, I think it's we are meeting physically after 2 years for this activity, and I must appreciate the Faculty of Graduate Studies and the organizing committee for in organizing this event for 2022. The research has become an important activity now in the University of Moratuwa, and this week, the activities of this week provide opportunity to showcase the research activities of the different faculties, the graduate students, to their colleagues, and also to interact among faculties, because we don't have a lot of opportunity. Though we are physically in one location, we do not have a lot of opportunities during the year to interact among faculties. Probably the research week provides such opportunity, and also to provides opportunity to interact with external researchers, community, society, to disseminate the knowledge that was created during the year, the research activities. So in this context, the activities of the research week is very important to the university. Both the activities organized by the FGS especially, as well as the conferences organized coinciding with the activities. I think 3 conferences are there. The Faculty of Business, which was inaugurated today morning. The Faculty of Architecture will be having the conference tomorrow, and Faculty of Information Technology next week, and several other events. And probably, I think in time to come, the universities with this financial difficulty has to try to earn at least certain amount of finances from their activities. And in this context, though for us I think ranking is important, but as we get undergraduate students from the UGC quota, the students don't look at ranking in selection of universities, but I think with new changes, probably even to attract students and to find finances for certain activities, the students will look for the rankings, and in this context, again, the research activities of the university will become an important aspect. We are doing this with a lot of hardships. The financial difficulties facing the university and the country has restricted funding for this activity. In spite, I must appreciate the organization committee headed by Professor Kulatunga, making this event a success, and also the Dean and the Faculty of Graduate Studies for their contribution to this event. I'm not going to talk long. I wish all the very best for the research activities of the research week, and which will also help the university to improve its research profile in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, we are moving to the most awaited and prominent event of the inauguration ceremony of the Research Week 2022. He is one of the prominent academics that our alma mater, University of Moratuwa, has ever produced. He is included in the top 2% researchers worldwide in a database linked to an article of PLOS Biology. Emeritus Professor and former head of the Department of Civil Engineering, visiting research fellow at the Institute of Complex Engineered Systems, Carnegie Mellon University, and gold medalist of the UNESCO team Best Results in the BSc Engineering, University of Moratuwa. I am privileged and grateful to invite our guest of honor and keynote speaker, Professor Priyan Dias, to deliver the keynote speech on reflections on research at Moratuwa University, a longitudinal view, to enlighten our research week, gathering with your knowledge and invaluable experience. Sir, it's over to you.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. I feel very inadequate to try and speak after an introduction like that. I would like to thank Professor Ajit Dialvis and the organizing committee for inviting me. So anyway, so those of you who are familiar with the Christian Bible, some of you might know that it's made of 66 books. 66 books, right? 4 of those are about the person of Jesus Christ, who is the main figure in the Bible. Now, all of those 4 accounts do not give the same view. Some people include some things, other people include other things. And some things that may have happened, may not have been included even, right? But if you read those 4, you get a general idea about the main focus, right? So this is my apology to say that, the view that I give about 50 years of research at Moratuwa may be not the complete picture, right? Hopefully it will focus on research at Moratuwa University. So there are other views also that will be presented. I think one is through a video that Udayangani is organizing. Then Dilika Dias is writing something for the 50th anniversary coffee table book, which Sumantri is coordinating, I think. And then Professor Rohan Lucas also will speak in general about the history of the university. So I might speak on some of these things. When I gave the topic, I said longitudinal view. I'm not really sure what that means. Some of these may be sort of, a historical view, but some of them may be just snapshots. And so please excuse me if you feel that, there are things I should have included that I haven't. Please excuse me if there are slight inaccuracies, although I have tried to remove most of them. And also if you feel that my emphases are not correct. It is my reflection, right? It is my reflection. I will try to talk about the future also, but talking about the future is very difficult. You can only extrapolate, right? But I start with the past, right? I start with the past, and this is not about research at Moratuwa. It's about people that Moratuwa has produced, right? And some of them as early as the Institute of Practical Technology, right? And people who have achieved, very significant academic heights in other parts of the world mostly, right? So the people on the top both have earned Doctors of Science, right? Jeevan Hool came to the Ceylon College of Technology, but Patrick Salvadore, like I said, to the Institute of Practical Technology. My personal favorites from the subsequent years are Harindra Fernando, who graduated in mechanical engineering, and you can see, he has supervised 24 PhDs and various things like that. And Nimal Rajapaksa, who is an expert in the very cutting-edge field of nanomechanics, and among all the other administrative duties he has performed, currently he is Deputy Vice Chancellor at the Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, right? So I think what this shows is that the university, even from its early days, through its training, was capable of producing stars, right? Okay, in the field of research. Now, this bit about Jeevan Hool is taken from his Wikipedia article, so there is a bit of an enigmatic and controversial statement that you can read on the screen saying that he came to the Ceylon College of Technology because there were too many Tamil students at Peradeniya. I will talk a little bit about Sinhala and Tamil students right at the end, right? Okay, but these are about early graduates. That's the point I'm trying to make, okay? Now we go on to, early innovation. Now, I was in the university as a student at this time. I entered in 1975. So all of us heard about this car that Professor P.A. De Silva is supposed to have sort of, fabricated in the mechanical engineering workshops. And as you can see, it seems to have gone along the roads and things like that. So we were not sure whether it was driven by solar power and things like that. But recently there was an interview given in Bolgoda Plains, which I will talk about later on also, where he talks about the use of regenerative braking technology, where, some of the energy that goes into braking is used to charge the batteries and things like that. So innovation also was there from very early on, okay? 20 years after this, there was a little more significant innovation in the sense that this particular innovation became commercialized, right? So these are two colleagues of mine from civil engineering, Amal Kumarge and Saman Bandara, Kapila Jayasinghe from electronics engineering, right? So the first traffic light that was produced in Sri Lanka was, located at what is called this Kurusahandia. Kurusahandia, you can see a cross. I don't think you can see that cross now. Those of you who know Moratuwa will know that there is a church called St. Joseph's Church down this road here. Amal Kumarge's house also is along one of these roads. I don't know whether that was also part of the decision to put this traffic light here. But apparently there was somebody who had died. I think one of his research students had died in an accident here. So, you know, there is a serious side to this as well. So, so you can see, if you can, this is very difficult even for me to read it here. This says Uni Road. That was the brand name. And it was given to the Road Construction and Development Company to produce. It cost only 20% of the imported cost. And I remember even those days, Amal Kumarge used to tell me, now look, only Colombo Municipal Council can afford traffic lights. There are no traffic lights anywhere else in the country. Maybe Kandy may have had one or two, right? So this was an opportunity for traffic lights to go out of Colombo, right? In fact, they even took it to a trade fair in Africa. But the story is that they were undercut by Plessey. Plessey is the big electronic giant, right? And so, of course, an attempt at commercialization, even in Sri Lanka, I think people were more interested in importing traffic lights rather than having them locally produced. And, you know, some of the problems that our country is in right now may be ascribed to that kind of mindset over the years, right? Importing has other fringe benefits also, which people don't normally talk about, right? But anyway, this was programmable for 400 days, so significant innovation, right? And then, of course, there is a small paper in Engineering Research Unit conference by Kapila Jayasinghe trying to extend this to, you know, a different area. Now, moving from innovation to actually research, I mean, there is research in innovation also, but typically research is associated with publishing, right? So, Dilika also has written about this, saying that this is probably the first publication to come out of Moratuwa University, right? Lead author Professor Samarajiva Karunaratne, but I have circled Professor Lucas's name and put his picture also here, because he was a prolific contributor, especially those days, to the Institution of Engineers Transactions and Proceedings, right? So these were the names that we knew about, you know, maybe as sort of senior students and just after we graduated. Professor Chandrakirti, of course, in my own department. So you can see this kind of research was based on final year students. Now, Abe Indurua actually joined the electrical engineering department and Sarath Pereira also, but this is when they were final years. And these two people also were final years in civil engineering. So based on the final year research projects, you know, it was possible to do research and publish, okay? Now, of course, we have come a long way. So we are happy about that, but, you know, it is possible only because of those early beginnings. So never, what shall I say, look down on early beginnings, because there are early beginnings even now for other things that we want to do. And the beginning might seem small, but it will become a big thing, right? So if you go and type in University of Moratuwa in Google Scholar, then you are able to get all of these things, and some of these are very important people. Actually, this is based on the number of citations. If you look at the number, the H index, I think Vatsala has the highest H index, maybe followed by Jagat Manatunga. Ruan Gopura is here. He is Director of Research right now. Ajit is the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, and various people that you are familiar with, right? Now, part of the reason why we can get this nice output from Google Scholar, perhaps, is because, you know, this was again done through either Senate Research Committee or maybe just the Senate, but, you know, there were various bodies that were sort of promoting research, and a rather controversial decision was made. I know some staff members came and complained to me also that you could not get your research allowance unless you gave your Google Scholar you know, what do you call it, address or link to Google Scholar, right? So maybe that was violating their rights to some extent, right? But most people agreed to it, and now we have Moratuwa University on the Google Scholar map, basically, right? The Google Scholar map. Now, what perhaps I was also aware of this, although this is not implemented to my knowledge at Moratuwa University. Now, there are these things called research tiers. Okay, maybe it's a bit small, no, the writing. So this is done by UGC, and I think I was peripherally involved in this through some committee with various other academics, like some of you might know, Professor Janaka De Silva, Viranja Karunaratne, and people like that. So now actually, anybody in the Sri Lanka university system or Sri Lanka scientific institutions can get yourself a tier, right? And your institution is supposed to tell you whether you are in tier 4 or tier 4 star or tier 3. At the moment, it is not linked to anything, but later on, Professor Malik Ranasinghe was quite involved in sort of promoting this. Later on, your research allowance might be increased if you are in tier 4 or tier 4 plus, 4 star, right? So this is something to keep your eye on, right? Now looking in the future, now from time to time I will talk about things in the future. Looking even further into the future, this is a small thing that I wrote in Journal of National Science Foundation. Comparing your H index for typical sort of academics, the engineering one is not myself, I took somebody else, right? In Google Scholar versus Scopus. So almost in every discipline, the H index in Scopus is less than the H index in Google Scholar, right? So you would know that, right? You would know that. So what I'm saying is, if you're a young researcher especially, or if you have young researchers that you're trying to guide, so they may be focusing on their performance in Google Scholar, you better tell them at least to have a look at Scopus also, because, in time to come, things are going to get tighter, and, because that's true always, because always the bar is going to be raised. Always the bar is going to be raised. Okay. Right. Then, of course, I should acknowledge these highly cited papers. This was mentioned also some time ago. Padma Amarasinghe, over 1,000 citations, right? So in perspective, now the maximum number of citations here is 3,084. So this is 1/3 of those citations. And of course, some of my colleagues in the department, Mahesh and Jagat and Buddhika, with I think maybe one of their students, recently wrote this review paper which has over 1,000 citations in just a matter of 3 years. So, I mean, those are things that we should celebrate, right? So that's the thing. I mean, I know that Ajit is taking great pains to create a research ecosystem, and a lot of people have contributed towards that. Not everybody is going to, within quotes, succeed, right? It doesn't mean that others have not succeeded. But unless you have a research ecosystem like that where everybody is trying, you will not get sort of a few people sort of, coming up with good stuff, right? So it's a whole picture that is important, although we do point out certain individuals, right? So this is another one where I'm going to embarrass Ranga a bit. Ranga's picture is here. So these are high impact papers, not the citations, right? Now, like I said earlier that maybe you should not focus so much on Google Scholar, but go to Scopus. There is one place in Google Scholar that is quite important, because it's a place called Google Scholar Metrics. Now, there may be other areas also, but Google Scholar Metrics is one location where conference papers and journals are compared on an equal basis, right? So they use an H5 index and something called an H5 median. So these are the actual top sources. They could be journals, they could be conferences. So Nature, New England Journal of Medicine, and Science, they are all journals. But next is a conference, an IEEE conference on computer vision and pattern recognition. And once again, Ranga and his students have managed to get two papers in that, right? Okay. Now, one of the things that I was party to when I was involved in, as Director Research or Senate Research Council, is to keep fine-tuning the research award scheme, right? So in the early days, maybe 2013, 2014, I will talk later about Professor Tennakone. I think he was the first chairman of the Senate Research Committee, right? It just says full paper is refereed and indexed, right? Refereed and indexed. But then, mainly due to pressure from people from electronics engineering and computer science, who rightly recognized that these conferences were more difficult to get in than journals, then we added this also. Top 20 sources in subcategories of Google Scholar metrics, right? So now this is the top list. Now, within this top list, there are 8 categories which are listed here. And within engineering and computer science, there are 56 categories, some of which are listed here, right? So altogether, there are 300 subcategories, right? So 300 subcategories multiplied by 20 sources in each one of them. There may be some overlaps. That means 600 sources. Now, if you go to things like civil engineering and structural engineering, there will not be a single conference, right? But if you go to fields like robotics and this computer vision, there will be many conferences because that's where the action is. Unfortunately, if you look at the UGC promotion scheme, it says up to 3 points per paper in a journal that publishes at least 2 per year, and 2 points if that paper is published in a recognized index journal, right? So, so there are many index journals, and many of us or many of you publish in index journals. But if you are publishing in this particular conference, which is listed 4th in the order of high impact sources, then you just get only 1 mark. You just get only 1 mark, right? So, you know, once I was in a committee with some of those other gentlemen I mentioned, like, you know, Janaka Pereira and Viraj Kandaratna, I tried to change this, right? But not easy to change, not easy to change. But we have to think about it, because I'll give you another example later on where things that have started at Moratuwa have been able to transform the research, you know, the general research system in the rest of the country, but high impact papers. Okay, then, once again, I'll highlight this Bolgoda Plains. Dilika wrote an article in this first volume 1, second issue, right? Based on this diagram that was produced by Saman Halgamuge, who is, of course, a friend of Moratuwa University. He's a graduate, and he is very helpful to sort of, once again, promote our research and things like that, right? So he has plotted, once again, I think for Scopus, So now if you look at the performance, this is in terms of research output, Colombo and Peradeniya are in a distinct category, and the rest of the university are in one bunch. If you do some sort of classification, you can easily classify, right? I mean, quantitatively or otherwise, you can say that, you know, this is one group and this is another group. Suddenly from 2015, Moratuwa University went from one group to the other group, right? So Dilika wrote this article and explained why, what are the reasons, right? So these are some of the things: director research, then SRC budget, you know, you know, a certain percentage of the capital grant was given for research. These excellence awards, all the time we raise the bar, and various things like this. Some of these things I will mention, where I have separate slides for, right? And also the fact that, you know, about Mercon, how it got Scopus indexing and things like that. Now, just a word of caution. Once again, now, I talked about conferences, and I said that if you publish in a good conference, that you have to get credit for it, right? But if you look at this large jump, right? So that same jump is indicated here, right? These are all publications coming out of Moratuwa that are indexed in Scopus, right? But if you look at the number of journal publications, they are maybe 1/3 or less, 1/3 or less, right? So of course we recognize that publishing in high impact conferences is important, but we can't only publish in, for example, Mercon or something like that, right? So we have to have a balance, and you have to know what is happening. So this is a little history of the engineering research unit, and also maybe an evolution in my own thinking, right? So I have to say, now, first of all, we started, I think Professor K.K.Y.W. Pereira was chairman. So in 1995, there were only the abstracts that were printed, right? So I was a very, I mean, relatively young person in 1995 compared to today, of course, right? And this is the paper that I presented at that conference, right? I wrote it up in a journal, Civil Engineering and Environmental Systems, right? So I thought that is the sort of model we should have, right? Okay, you have a conference, do only abstracts, then the staff members are free to try and target good journals and publish there. But things happened in a different way, because then people thought, okay, if you call for only abstracts, then the quality even of the presentations is going to be very poor, because somebody will just send an abstract, with half an hour's writing on a computer screen, right? So then full papers were called for only the abstracts printed. Full papers were called, and they were of course all refereed and printed, and then finally indexed in Scopus through IEEE, and then we had this Mercon conference, right? So I have to say that I try to publish in Mercon every year now, right? I feel it has achieved a particular stature. So my thoughts are very different to when it was here, because I thought, okay, let's only do an abstract and try and target journals, right? So the fact remains that there are many more researchers, there are places they need to publish, and you need to have, I suppose, a kind of a spectrum of quality, both conference papers and journal papers, right? So these are some of the things that the Senate Research Committee did. I like to acknowledge the contributions of some of these people. Mr. Pushpakirti, who is the Bursa, then Mr. Dishan Jayanta, who is now at the UGC, and Visakha Kulasekara, right? I think I forgot to talk about the people earlier, no? These are the 3 vice chancellors and the first chairman of the Senate Research Committee, Professor Tennakon. I think Professor Vijayasekara was responsible for setting up that Senate Research Committee. Then Professor Malik Ranasinghe and Professor Ananda Jayawardena, they of course sort of drove, I mean, they were within that time, and it was sort of like, they were promoting research, especially Malik also has a very good publication profile. But Anand did something very, very, in a sense, unique almost, because after he stopped being Vice Chancellor, he went as Director General of National Science Foundation, right? Now, just before he went and during the time he was Vice Chancellor, Senate Research Committee, again through pressure from people like electronics and computer science, they said, none of our graduates are going to come and work for 40,000 rupees a month, right? So we increased it that time from 40,000 to 60,000. It was very difficult, the paperwork. That's why I mentioned people like Dishan and Visakha, because, you have to have budget revisions, because this year it was 40,000, and next year even for that same project we paid the person 60,000 rupees. Now when Anand went to National Science Foundation, he made the National Science Foundation stipends also 60,000. Then the National Research Council figured they could not pay 40,000, they also paid 60,000. So like that, things that we do here can have a ripple effect, under the correct set of circumstances. Okay. Right. Now, to do research, of course, we need equipment, right? We need equipment. And now, I don't know, this is a matter of opinion. Some of the most sophisticated equipment is, I think, in material science and engineering department, right? And these are some of the things that you can get from it. This is not things that have been obtained from these equipments, but this is from a PhD student I actually supervised in Western Australia, who used equipment there, of course, right? But we can do all of that here. We can do all of that here. Previously, only Slintech had it. Now, Ajit Dialvis is here. He was Chief Scientific Officer or something like that at Slintech, right? Now, that is on the one hand. So, if you look at typically engineering research, you will have experimental research that is reflected by this kind of equipment, and of course, computational or numerical research, right? This is a photograph of IBM 1130. This photograph is in that book on the history of Moratuwa University at the 25th anniversary event, right? Professor Karunaratne wrote this and I helped him a bit. But now these are some, I really don't know how this works. This is from the high performance computing, what do you call it, lab or whatever it is, right? So computing power has increased significantly. Now, 2 things I want to say. I just looked at the website. I don't know whether you can read this, right? So it appears that, head of department and the dean can approve up to 500,000 rupees now. When I was around, it was still 200,000 rupees. So I think this is an advance, right? I hope this is correct, 500,000 rupees, right? Because all the time the cost of living is going up, prices are going up, but these approval limits, unless you are careful, they stick at the same level, right? So somebody needs to be watching this and make sure the approval levels are going up. That is one thing. The second thing that I want to say is that, as this is talking mainly to engineering faculty, I suppose, and maybe to a few other faculties also. Now, maintaining equipment like this is a non-trivial task. Generally in Sri Lanka, not only where equipment is concerned, even where buildings are concerned, maintaining it is quite difficult, right? So we need to ask in the future, of course I'm not saying don't use equipment, but I'm also saying that there are many universities, even in the UK, that do not focus too much on experimental research because it is too expensive. So certainly in some fields, they focus only on this numerical modeling, right, for which you have computers which are not so expensive, right? So it's something that we need to think about in the future. Right, one of the other innovations, of course, is this industry research labs, right? Industry research labs. So these are two of the longest standing labs, the Dialogue Lab and the University of Moratuwa, I think Samsung Industries Limited, SIL, with the DSI company. So these have actually resulted in some products, right? Some of those products are listed here and then described in this bottom place here also. Now here also there were certain administrative barriers that had to be overcome, meaning that there were people who were called research engineers probably, who had to be paid maybe more than senior lecturers, right? So then a mechanism had to be introduced, and that was UNIC, right? So UNIC is a company that is, I don't know what it's called, it's basically shareholders are the University of Moratuwa staff, right? So, but it is able to sometimes use certain sort of strategies that are slightly outside the university system towards, these kinds of, towards creating these kinds of, making these kinds of things happen, right? Making them happen, right? Now the other thing is, of course, now what this slide shows is the whole implementation, right? So these are through labs. I just have one slide because once again it is, you excuse me, it is from my department, right? And even from the time of Professor Chandrakirti, there has been research done on these alternative materials, right? So maybe it is only in the recent past, maybe 5-10 years, that things have started really taking off, right? This is a paper by Tishan and Singta Jayasinghe on this expanded polystyrene-based lightweight concrete panels. So there is actually, a company that is manufacturing these, and they and their students have to sort of, promote that and maybe answer some solutions. Then there is this group called Habitat for Humanity Sri Lanka who are building houses in the north and east. They recently got a EU project because I am on the board of that NGO. And the NGO was supposed to persuade the beneficiaries, 40% of the beneficiaries, to choose, alternative building materials. And somehow they managed to do that, right? Mostly cement stabilized earth blocks, right? So that was a significant breakthrough because normally people don't like these alternative materials, right? So it's this early work done by Asoka Pereira and people like that is now bearing fruit. This is a bit of a more futuristic one. Anura Nanayakkara was involved in this ICC. This is actually a modular house, right? The entire 660-foot apartment has been constructed in the factory and lifted into place. This is actually happening here. There is actually a prototype, right? And this is one on road concrete paving blocks. It's not really a housing solution, by Vasanta Mamperachi. Yeah, so there's just a snapshot about research that will end up in actual production and actual construction. But it sometimes doesn't happen overnight, is what I'm trying to say, right? Now, one of the things mentioned by Dilika in her article are these multidisciplinary research centers. Now, I hope I have got this right? So these are the 8 centers that were set up, right? Initially 7, I think. Disaster risk reduction, I think, came a bit later. Now it so happened, this also happened when Ananda Jayawardena was Vice Chancellor, and I think, I can't remember the amount of money that was given at the start, maybe 2.5 million rupees or something like that, right? But almost all of them, you know, when the ahead grants came, it was strongly encouraged that the centers bid for these ahead grants. Of course, not only the centers, other people also bid for them, right? But out of these, well, initial 7 centers, almost everybody got one of these grants, right? So there is a gap in this disaster risk. I know Yudhyangan is inordinate. I'm not sure whether there was a grant or not, but once again, you know, it is very interesting that that kind of seed money, just 2.5 million a center, was able to create a situation where these grants worth typically 40 million rupees, you know, it was possible to win those grants. So I think this is also a success story, right? Now here, this is not so much a longitudinal view, snapshots, right? Okay. So next thing I want to say, so a university's reputation, apart from the papers we publish and things like that, is from the graduates we produce, right? The graduates we produce. So this is a list that I have sort of tried to curate over time, again related to my department. All of the graduates from Mortuary Engineering who have been admitted to Cambridge University for PhD scholarship. So over this, I don't know how much, 30-year period, 35-year period, we have 23 students, especially in recent time, at least 1 a year, on average 1 a year, right? And if you look at this list, there are 18 people who have completed, 1 and 2 have returned to Sri Lanka, so have 10 and 11, 17 and 18. So 8 people out of 17 returning to Sri Lanka, not bad from a place like Cambridge, right? And they are all in university appointments, 2 of them are in Peradeniya, right? So it is not good, of course, to have our research reputation based only on people we send to other parts of the world, right? Because number one, we will not get any benefit from them because our best students, we are sending as research students to other people. And then secondly, our credibility or our stature is also not increased, right? So which is why the other thing that happened is higher degrees at Moratuwa itself. So this is also taken from that article of Dilikas in Bolgoda Plains. You can refer it up yourself. It's open access or whatever. So the ones in hatched lines are the actual PhDs who were produced. These ones are the registrations, okay? So the first PhD was Chinta Jayasinghe in 1999. So she is way off the scale in this direction, right? So Chinta, of course, is currently head of civil engineering. Previously, she was, director postgraduate studies in engineering faculty. 2009 convocation was a bit of a freak for civil engineering. There were 5 PhD graduates, 2 of them were taken on Moratuwa, on the civil engineering staff. So Rangika Halbatura remains. He is a very versatile person, shall we say, apart from his academic credentials, which you can see. He has also been now currently president of FUTA and also the commissioner in the Sri Lanka Inventors Commission, right? So what I'm saying is, in terms of contribution, the graduates that we produce are pretty good. I mean, you can be proud of the graduates produced at Moratuwa University. Now, if you look at these bars, the largest bar by far is the one for MSc by research, okay? So this came about through the ADB Science and Technology Personal Development Project, which also allowed stipends to be paid for researchers, but it came under a social upliftment component. The people who had to be registered, you had to make sure that 50% were women and that all of them were underprivileged, right? So it was a bit difficult. We tried to get around that, saying that every single graduate of Moratuwa University is underprivileged. I mean, compared to the rest of the world, all of us are underprivileged. I'm not sure how we managed it. But anyway, the bylaws were created for this 1-year research degree, which were not there before, right? And Niranjani Ratnayaka was the first director of postgraduate studies who oversaw all of this. and Lakshman Ratnayak, I think, was dean at that time, or he was also quite involved in this ADB, Science and Technology Personal Development Project. So now we have moved it a bit further, step further, and now instead of people getting only Moratuwa University degrees, people doing research at Moratuwa can get a Moratuwa degree as well as a degree from another institution. So that's another step forward, I think, right? Oops. Right. So you can see, of course, all of these are currently with Australia. There have been attempts, I think, to collaborate with some Canadian universities. Not happened yet, but I'm sure it will happen in the future, right? And of course, as always, there are problems with various things, all of these administrative things. At one time, for a MOU, even to do a joint PhD, had to go through, the whole rigmarole to Attorney General's Department and Defense Ministry and all kinds of things. I think the situation has eased a bit, right? But still you get a few hiccups like this. Now, when something comes from Australia, it says that if there is a dispute, it will be solved under the laws of the state of Victoria, right? So even right now, we are having a small problem like that. I think the current dean, FGS, is trying to change that a bit, and they change it in a way that, Australia is not mentioned directly. What I'm trying to say is, for research to flourish, there have to be some people who are doing this kind of research administration, right? So I think we have been blessed with some such people in the past. I'm saying in the future also, especially those of you who are very good researchers, might want to consider giving back to the research ecosystem by doing this research administration, especially if you have influence in, places like NSF and the ministries and things like that. You have to try and smooth the way for younger researchers to flourish, okay? So talking about international presence and things like that, we have had international collaborations also, right? Now, especially at this time, from European Union and also Global Challengers Research Fund in the UK, staff members in those universities can get the funds only if they have third world partners or developing country partners, right? So I would like to flag this as a, what shall I say, as an impressive project. Maybe one reason is because it's with Imperial College London and I'm an alumnus of Imperial College London. But also it is a very interesting project. I mean, going from bone materials on the one hand to bone fixators and actually producing those bone fixators. This is for, blast trauma, I think. If a person's leg is affected by a blast, then how do you take some remedial action? It results in joint collaboration, perhaps some kind of, actual output like this. And also publications, right? So I think once again this was driven by Angelo Karnaratne, who also was, I think, a postgraduate, a postdoctoral fellow at Imperial. Now he came to Moratuwa University and then he was able to make this link, but unfortunately he left the university, right? So we are going to have things like this also in the future, right? Younger people might leave the university, because now all of us will be taxed at higher rates. I don't know if the university salaries will be sufficient to keep people. At least now people are not going overseas. There are opportunities for them to go within the country and maybe get a little bit more than they get at the university. So fortunately, people in mechanical engineering, Professor Gopura and people like that were able to manage this, keep this in the country and bring it to a successful conclusion, right? So these are all the issues that are there, but we have success in the middle of all of this, right? Now the next slide is a tribute to my friend and colleague Samantha Hettiarachchi, but it's not only because he's my friend and colleague. So Samantha actually was really an actor on the global stage, right? Apart from his research, he had that knack of being able to talk to not only scientists, but also to bureaucrats, not only in our country, but in 26 Indian Ocean rim states, right? And set up this Indian Ocean tsunami warning system, right? So you have these wave buoys that are listed here, right? and in the process, so this is coming under UNESCO, and when the UNESCO Director General came, we see that he is presenting her with a copy of this. This also was a spin-off of all his involvement, a UNESCO guide, right? He was also involved in some of those EU projects that I mentioned, and fortunately some of these projects are going on through other people who are carrying them forward, right? Now here also there was a collaboration with Dilanthi Amaratunga, who is once again a graduate from building economics. There is a what you call it, one of the issues is in memory of Samantha in this journal, Disaster Resilience in the Built Environment, right? Okay. So players on the global stage, and we need some of you to step up to that in the future as well, right? Now, we talked about researchers going from here to other countries. We talked about international collaboration and joint PhDs. I feel this is an area that the university is lacking, and we need to think about this, right? The first overseas research student actually was supervised by Rohan Lucas and Abe Indurua in 1983 in the Department of Electrical Engineering. The next one, to my knowledge, is in August 2013, once again Department of Electrical Engineering. Now, I don't know whether I'm ignorant of anything that happened in architecture or other faculties, so once again, forgive me if I'm wrong, right? I know there are international student exchanges. Once again, the Madanjit Center here, this has, graduated so many students from the region, the South Asia region, but it's not really research students. Those are basically a course, and there is a research component, right? Now, every other day you see in the newspaper that the president is saying that, we need to bring foreign universities here, and that, even today it said that Sri Lanka will be an education hub, right? So at least we need to be able to say that we have had some overseas students, right? So I think this is an area that we should work on, my opinion, right? Okay, so now, I ask your indulgence for this bit of vanity for putting my picture in this, right? Okay, so I was introduced also as being part of these top 2% scholars and things like that. But the reason I put it is for something else actually, right? So, this word value, right? If you think about this English word value, in one sense, the values that we have are things that cannot be measured, right? Things like honesty and integrity and dependability, those things cannot be measured. They are the values that we have, right? But in another sense, we are valued only, when we can be measured also, right? It's a bit of a paradox, right? Now, the reason I put this is that, some of you here have more greater H indices than I have, right? Okay? And maybe more citations. So, how come I got in the index and not others, right? And there are many people elsewhere in the world that I respect also who are not in this thing, right? So, that is why the authors of this say, we alert users that all citation metrics have limitations and their use should be tempered and judicious, right? The first thing. Second thing is, this is actually part of the research of a person called John Ioannidis, who is trying to reflect certain, if you want, values in this particular measurement, right? He is excluding self-citations, right? He is giving more credit if you are the first author, or if you are a single author, right? So, and there are various things, right? So, what I'm trying to say is, that when we are researchers and when we are measured like this, we might try to beat the system and, try to get other people to cite our work and various things like that. There are various tricks that people can be up to. But eventually, somebody is going to come up with some kind of index that is going to measure your true worth, right? So one of the areas is, for example, the output of this research in terms of real impact of research, right? I talked about some of those things earlier about the housing materials now actually being used. Now those things cannot be measured right now, but somebody in the future is going to be able to come up with some way of measuring it, right? Measuring the results of science investments, okay? as it is, where some grants are concerned, there are ways that people, create the criteria so that the applicants are encouraged to do research that will actually make a difference. For example, an industrial partner, inclusion of a co-investigator from the line State Department to disseminate the findings is encouraged. Industrial partner were relevant to ensure possible commercialization. So all these people has to be part of the research team, right? So you get more points under these NRC target-oriented grants, okay? Don't know how am I for time? Okay. Right. Okay, now we move on to maybe some of the things that are just beginning to happen, right? So I want to highlight something in the building economics department now, and actually this adjunct professorship, right? So Mohan Kumaraswamy, well, I mean, he's a friend of mine. I mean, not such a close friend, but I have got to know him professionally, right? So I think building economics department is benefiting greatly from this particular adjunct professorship, right? He was a professor at Hong Kong University for many years, fairly highly rated university, and now he's helping the building economics department. So if you look at his own PhD students, he is jointly supervising with people in Hong Kong University, 3 students recently who have graduated from the Department of Building Economics. So he's creating a pathway from there, right? He has this journal called Built Environment and Asset Management, right? I can't read this very well, and you all also can't read it, right? But 2 of the staff members from Building Economics are either editors, joint editors, or assistant editors, right? So there is also benefit like that, right? And the World Conference Series that is done by that department, there is a best paper award given by this journal, right? So I think the ability to tap key people as honorary or adjunct professors also can take us some long distance, right? Now this next one may be a bit controversial. This is Ajit Pascal's company, right? Okay. So now apart from everything that he does at the university, I think, I'm not sure what the ownership situations is and things like that, but this Paracom is a company that he gives leadership to clearly, right? And probably, I don't know, maybe a lot of the electronics engineering graduates are working here. So many of these products and services, things like hardware acceleration, network analysis, bandwidth management, and things like that. And the important thing is that there are many export destinations as well, right? So you look at top universities worldwide, of course, in areas like, this IT and computer science and biotechnology and all, there are staff members with companies, and that is also, creating a symbiotic relationship with the university in that kind of way. So, because I was asked to talk about the future, this could be one future, not for everyone, of course, but, for some people to consider. Research publicity, right? So, Bolgada Plains, these are the first 2 issues of Bolgada Plains, promoted by the current Dean, Faculty of Graduate Studies. So research publicity is very important. So I was president of the National Academy of Science for 2 years, and one of the things that we started, which has sort of stopped for the moment, but we like to pick it up, is to actually put this in the newspapers. And if you look at some of the articles in Bolgada Plains, they can be easily converted to Sunday Times articles like this. Word limit 1,200 words. We actually got a former graduate of ours also to write this. Right, so this is about Rohan Munasingha's drones, right? But I think we need to. National Academy of Sciences wanted this translated to Sinhala and Tamil as well. Did not happen. But we need to work on that as well, right? Because at the end of the day, the people who pass the education and science budget in Parliament, they need to know some action is happening, right? They need to know some action is happening. Maybe they don't all read English. Right? So we have to think about that, right? Apart from the general public in the country as well, right? Endowment fund, another recent initiative because of our crisis. I don't know how much work has been, how much money has been collected or can be collected in this kind of way, but at least there is some kind of agreement between the Victoria or Melbourne Alumni Association and Moratuwa University, right? But before I leave this slide, when things get better, right? You know, at least some of you should remember this UGC finance